Join us on the Mattress Warehouse hotline. It's our pal JP Finlay, covers WFT for NBC Sports Washington. What's up, JP?
What's going on, guys? Thank you for having me.
Mr.
Hey, so
Finley,
yesterday,
why do you have to troll Drab T-shirt, our producer, with your tweet from 8 hours ago about the fake crowd noise being louder in Seattle? Why you got to troll Drab like that?
Drab and I just had such a nice conversation, too. I'm not trying to troll anybody, but like the feed we're hearing is also the production feed. So that's not what it sounds like in the stadium. It just seemed like the production feed was kind of juicing the crowd because it's Seattle.
Yeah, it definitely seemed loud. Hey, I wanted to ask you about being part of that Zoom call with Ron Rivera. So we had a little fun with this yesterday. It seemed like he was very prickly. I think that was the Wednesday Zoom call. You were part of that. What was your takeaway from Ron that day?
My season-long takeaway is my guy Pete tends to get it the hardest, I think.
Really?
I mean, just kind of joking around, but like Pete asked him about the kicker thing, and Ron took exception to that. There's been, other things this season that I think Ron's taken exception to.
And Pete was 100% correct, by the way, to ask the question, and Ron is being completely duplicitous to say he never was thinking about a change when earlier in the week he said he was considering competition.
So we broke this down on my podcast. Here were the differences. So I asked him Monday about Hopkins. Are you thinking about bringing in competition? And Ron said, we're in discussions. And then Wednesday, Pete said, hey, Ron, you were having conversations about a new kicker. And Ron's like, I never said conversations. So it's
semantics.
It's a little bit of semantics, totally. Yeah. But here's my analogy. We're in the middle of COVID, pandemic, everything, right? I want to sell my wife's car. She doesn't go anywhere. We pay $500 a month for a car that sits in front of our house. We've had discussions about it, but in no way is my wife considering actually selling this car.
JP Finley is, though. He wants an extra $500 a month going to the bottom line.
You're giving Ron, to me, the benefit of the doubt. The bottom line is he was thinking about it. It's impossible not to think about it if you're considering competition.
He's parsing words because he's pissed off and he's angry.
And by the way, JP, just do it, because I did it about, 7 or 8 months ago, and so I'm paying less insurance and I don't have a second car payment.
Oh, dude, it sounds like heaven. As for Ron, I think Bickle nailed it. I think he's frustrated. I think he wants to – it's also easy for Ron to come out and slam a reporter, especially on Zoom, and that makes it seem like he's standing up for his guy, like, listen, Hop, I got your back. Go out and make these kicks. So I think in some ways that might have been premeditated. Like, whoever asked me about Hopkins, I'm telling him that that's my guy no matter what. Because, listen, Hop struggled. He's been around for a while. He largely has had a very good career here in Washington, but this is probably his worst season. So maybe Ron, this is his way of letting his kicker know, listen, I got your back. Go make me some kicks.
JP, I understand having your players back, but who's more disposable on an NFL roster than a kicker? I mean, those guys get replaced and wind up in new spots all the time. I mean, if they're here more than 2 or 3 seasons, that's an upset.
Agreed, but listen, we always talk about the quarterback abyss, which Washington seems to never get out of,
right?
Which is just like this retread and always in search of the answer. You get into that terrible kicker rotation, ask the Chargers or the Bears. I mean, there are a lot of teams out there that have guys that never seem to be able to make big kicks. I mean, Hop for his career has made 84% of his kicks, 95% of his extra points. The one area I would point to with Dustin that you'd like to see more and more, field goal kickers are a long-distance threat in the NFL. I mean, you see routinely every week guys are making 50-yarders. That happens. And Hopkins, for his career is 50% from 50 yards or more. I got the stats in front of me. He's 11 of 22. You'd like to see that number way higher because he's not a guy that there's any question about leg strength. He bombs it. It's just accuracy. So I think if you wanted to critique something, that's what I'd look at, because you look at the Ravens, man. Before they had Lamar, they were still grinding out wins because Justin Tucker could kick it from the parking lot.
Right. JP, I'm sure you saw that Cooley, I guess he does a podcast with Sheehan, And I thought he had a spectacular suggestion. And, when you consider how huge these staffs are, think about an NBA staff, right? They got 15 coaches sometimes. He pointed out that a kicker simply has like a Danny Smith type, right? They're just a guy that sort of oversees it all. And he suggested that kickers should have their own kicking specialist coach, especially for times when they're going bad, And like a golf coach, he has a swing coach, he has his putting coach, sure, right? He has his long game guy, whatever. That makes all the sense in the world to me.
It makes a ton of sense. Literally at practice, the kicker, the punter, and the long snapper are kind of off on their own. Yeah. And Nate Katzer, the special teams coach, talks to them, but they are largely left to do their own thing. And I think it's almost more of somebody just to reinforce the good habits. I think at this point, Hop has been an NFL kicker, he just turned 30 in October, so he's been in the NFL 6-7 seasons. I think he knows what to do. He knows.
Right, but every swing gets out of whack, right?
Totally. Especially if you look this year, it looks like he's pushing kicks right. Mm-hmm. So maybe there is something if you start breaking down the film or watching. You get what do they call it on the CBS golf coverage? The Konica Minolta vision, where they turn
exactly.
it
They'll know it. They'll know it.
Angle.
Exactly.
Yeah. That
get Peter Costas out there. Exactly.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think it's a great idea. I don't know. I'm surprised with all the money the league and these guys are willing to spend. You do kind of overlook kickers, and they just use them as sort of interchangeable parts. But the fact is, there aren't that many good ones. And if you got one like Hopkins, who's got a proven track record, why wouldn't you just see? And that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to have faith in him, But sometimes you need a little help.
Well, as much as they say 3 phases of a football game: offense, defense, special teams. Special teams largely gets forgotten. And if you look just on Pro Football Reference, there's they have this stat, expected points. Washington's a minus in the expected points in special teams in every game this season. And they've had a couple like whoppers, like -9, -10. So that's hurting. On a team, on a bad team with a razor-thin margin for wins, special teams can kill you. And you can point to a couple games where they've lost by 3 and there's been a missed kick. So it's been a factor for sure.
Talking to JP Finlay, Washington football team insider for NBC Sports Washington. All right, let's get to this matchup. Washington against the Bengals. Let's start with Chase Young. The Bengals don't protect Joe Burrow very well. Can this be another game where Chase Young can get off like he did early in the season against Philadelphia?
You'd like to – Chase is undeniably having a great year, but the stats don't pop. There haven't been a ton of those major impact plays. And, it's pretty cool. You've got the number 1 versus the number 2 pick matchup from this year's draft. I think you'd love to see Chase get home a bunch. Or if he can't and he's drawing these double teams and the triple teams occasionally, then let Montez get home or let John Allen get – The lack of impact plays last week in Detroit from the front 4, I thought stood out a little bit, honestly.
Stood out. They had one hit, JP. They had one quarterback hit.
Well, they had the linebacker blitz that got called back on the roughing, and then they had the safety blitz. But to your point, it wasn't enough of an impact against a not great Lions team. Joe Burrow takes a lot of sacks, but he also tries to extend a lot of plays and stay in everything until the last second, which I imagine as his career advances, he'll probably kind of get rid of the football a little bit more. You see that with a lot of rookie QBs, especially, really high-end rookie quarterbacks. But, yeah, dude, I think for some fans it's easy to get frustrated that the sack numbers aren't there for Chase. I think for folks that really watch the game, you can tell what an impact he's having. And if you listen to the coaching staff, how thrilled they are to have him and all those sorts of things. But Washington tends to feast against bad offensive lines. That's where a big percentage of their sack total comes from, and this is a big opportunity this week.
Well, another big opportunity, too, because the Bengals are down some key players. It doesn't look like Mixon will go. He's still dealing with a foot injury. T. Higgins didn't practice yesterday because of an illness. They have capable fill-ins like Gio Bernard, but they're down some of their biggest skill players, so that has to be advantage Washington this weekend.
Excuse me.
I totally, but I don't think Kenny Golladay played for the Lions last week, and Matt Stafford was able to find people deep.
That is true.
That's a great point.
I mean, I think this Washington defense has given up so many big plays over the course of the year, and there was a period where it looked like they kind of stopped the big play bug, and then it came back last week in Detroit in a big way. Stafford had 3 passing touchdowns. We all remember that 55-yard bomb to a receiver that nobody had in fantasy football, at least. If you had that dude in DraftKings, you probably won $1 million.
Oh, yeah. You're loving it.
I don't know. I think, I mean, they haven't had Mixon for a while, and Bernard's been a somewhat capable fill-in for them. I'm to the point where you can come up with reasons why Washington should have an advantage, but after you lose to the Giants and the Lions, you kind of got to other teams are looking at how they have advantages over Washington too. So I've tried to convince myself to get out of the habit of saying, this is a winnable game for Washington because the opponent might not be that good. Well, Washington just has to perform. I mean, they haven't scored on an opening drive all year. That's kind of hard to do through.
They should have.
They
should have in this last game, and then they got too cute with that reverse.
The reverse killed him, and then listen, I was highly critical of Dwayne early in the year and of Kyle Allen for taking sacks they can't take. Alex taking that sack on third down to drop it out of field goal range. Now listen, he barely had any time. That DN was right on top of him, but it's a bad sack to take, and he's a veteran. To go from 2nd and 2 at the 14 to punting is just a disaster. And I do believe I wrote a story on this that in their last 4 games, Washington's offense is averaging 400 yards per game. Over the course of the season, that would put them in the top 5 in the league in offensive output per game. Now, that doesn't directly correlate to scoring, but it's a really good indicator of scoring. Mm-hmm. So if they're able to continue to move the ball like this, the points should start to pop. And I think against this Bengals defense, you could see some points. I just think Joe Burrow, coming off the worst game of his NFL career last week in Pittsburgh, I don't know if you read any of his comments this week. I mean, he is really hard on himself, which I think is the mark of a really good young player. And I think he could be due for a bounce back as well. Call me nuts. I kind of think this thing could be a little bit of a shootout.
Ooh. JP, I will offer you a free drink of your choice, beer, brown liquor, whatever it is, if you can tell me what the JD stands for in J.D. McKissick.
Oh, my God. I wish I knew this.
You don't know this? Juris Doctor?
No,
stands
it's
for
not
Joshua Dobby McKissick, who, by the way, has already, through 9 games, he has reached a career high in receptions with 41. He is just on an absolute tear. Alex Smith loves delivering him the ball. When he was signed during the offseason, I was like, he's a scat back. He'll catch a few balls. But, I mean, he's going to catch like 75 balls in this offense, maybe more.
I mean, he had 15 targets last week.
It's crazy.
He has 29 targets in the last 2 games, and the bulk of those are since Alex has taken over. The usage is wild. Now, Alex, I think, is kind of – I do think there's this weird, almost accidental, perfect marriage of Scott Turner's offense and Alex Smith playing, because for much of his career, Alex has been known as a check down guy, that he'll dump it off to the backs. And Scott Turner's offense, a lot of his run designs are passes. So people get caught up in the balance of, actual handoffs to the amount of passes being thrown. But a lot of the run game is built on the quarterback delivering that ball to a back outside. So, I mean, I don't know that 15 targets per game is necessarily sustainable or strong, because I think some of that was game flow when you're down 3 touchdowns in Detroit and you just have to pass every down. But, I mean, if I had to set an over-under for McKissick targets going forward, though, per game, I think you're looking at, like, if I set it at 8.5, I think that'd be right around the number, 8 or 9 targets per game.
I think you have a great point. I think you have a great point, JP, where you could, because I know even JP Flame here gets upset when Alex throws all of these, dumps off all these balls to the backs, but they're designed running plays. He just happens to be throwing them. It's not necessarily a check down. Everyone says, "Oh, Alex throwing check downs all day." No, that was actually the designed first option.
Totally. And think about the success they have with Christian McCaffrey doing it. Nobody was worried about checkdowns to McCaffrey. It was celebrated as innovative offense, and a lot of the analytic folks would talk about how you do that on first down rather than hand it off tackle, and you're able to get more yards, and then that opens up play action, or it opens up a tight end dragging across the other side. And that's the plan. Now, again, game flow dictates a lot of this. Last week, they had to throw all the time because they're down 3 TDs. But I do think the McKissick target increase is not an accident.
JP, good stuff as always. Real quick, do you lean Washington or do you lean Cincinnati?
I got beat up last week for picking Detroit. So the smartest bet around is to fade Washington first half if you're looking for something.
That's true.
But
That is.
I do kind of think Washington can win this. I think they're going to put up some points. The yardage is there, and if you believe in math and science, like so many people have signs in their front yard, then the science will tell you that points should come.
And there's always our scientific do theory.
Do theory is huge. Huge.
That's also called the gambler's fallacy. But yeah, we can.
Yeah.
Thank you,
You know
JP.
the last time the Washington beat the Bengals
No, what is it?
in a regular season game?
What is it?
September 22nd, 1991.
Oh my God.
Do theory.
Well, how many times is that? How many? Because I will always bet on Washington against the Bengals. Go ahead.
They've only played 4 times since that. The last time was the tie in London in 2016.
Gotcha.
All right, JP.
The
Good
last
stuff as
time
always.
Washington beat the Bengals, B. Mitch returned a punt for a touchdown.
That's great.
That's going way
I
back.
love that.